Thank you, Speaker. And I was looking for a nice, quiet afternoon here in the House, and it just hasn't quite turned out that way. But it is a lively debate, and we do enjoy it. It makes it for a quicker afternoon. So, thank you, Speaker. And as Minister Jones previously described, the Protecting Ontario Food Independence Act is all about strengthening the province's agri-food sector. When we think about how we can best support that goal, some of the obvious work we can do is to make sure that the province's agriculture legislation continues to meet the needs of the sector. From time to time, it is important that we review legislation, especially statutes that have been in place for many years. As time passes, certain wording and procedures in legislation can become outdated. We revisit legislation to ensure that it aligns with our current practices and expectations. Specifically, we review pieces of agriculture legislation with the goal of increasing efficiency and streamlining processes for farmers and agribusinesses. Because anything we can do to reduce administrative burden on farmers and agribusinesses is welcome. These business operators are busy people, balancing multiple responsibilities and limiting their time. And trust me, ask any farmer if they'd rather be out in the field planting crops or in the barn milking the cows or looking after the cattle or doing paperwork. They will all agree that they would put in twice as many hours in the field. More time we can potentially save farmers time and energy by simplifying administrative and regulatory processes. The more they can then focus on running their businesses. To streamline services, one of the proposals in the bill is to consolidate two separate adjudicative bodies that perform similar tasks into one. We are proposing to consolidate the Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Appeal Tribunal and the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board into one new tribunal called the Agriculture and Agri-Food Protection Tribunal. This consolidation would be achieved by amending the Farming and Food Protection Act to transfer the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board's jurisdictions, powers, and the ongoing matters to the new Agriculture and Agri-Food Protection Tribunal. The new tribunal would handle all agriculture disputes, reducing red tape for farmers, property owners, and municipalities. Consolidating two separate adjudicative bodies into one would deliver a more streamlined client experience for these parties. Rural municipalities, farmers, and property owners will benefit from more consistent service standards, improved digital tools, easier navigation, and a single set of rules. Through this proposed action, we are also supporting Ontario's priority to reduce the number of provincial agencies and modernizing the delivery of adjudicative services. Another proposal under the Protecting Ontario's Farm Independence Act is to update the Protecting Farmers from Non-Payment Act to support Ontario's financial protection programs. Financial protection programs may not be well known outside of the agri-food sector, but to farmers they are important. In a nutshell, Ontario's financial protection programs help protect producers, who are sellers, from the financial risk of the dealers, who are the buyers, defaulting on payments. Financial protection programs also protect owners when a grain elevator operator who stores the grain on their behalf for the farmer does not return the grain when requested. We are proposing amendments to the Protecting Farmers from Non-Payment Act that would expand the application of specific provisions, such as regulating agreements between buyers and sellers to support the financial protection program. Our proposed amendments would also update enforcement measures under the Act, including the revising the realization of security provisions and the addition of new regulations, making powers for administrative penalties. If passed, these changes would help to enhance clarity around the Act's requirement, making compliance easier for regulated parties in the grain and beef cattle sectors. Again, this comes back to our commitment to support and strengthen Ontario agriculture. A direct way we can do this is to ensure that the Ontario legislation that impacts farmers and agribusinesses meet their needs. In another effort to support the agri-food sector, the agri-food sector's future stability, we are proposing to amend the Ontario Food Terminal Act. The Ontario Food Terminal Act is the largest wholesale fruit and produce distribution centre in Canada, and it is a central hub of the province's agri-food sector. It was established in 1954. The terminal is home to a farmers market area with 550 stalls, a warehouse unit area, and a central cold storage that is over 100,000 square feet in size. It helps support farmers, local fruit and vegetable stores, independent and chain markets, retailers, restaurants, food services, caterers, farmers markets, farm gate markets, florists, garden centres, landscapers, convenience store, and institutions. In short, it functions at the very connected centre of our food system in Ontario from its Etobicoke location. When you think of all the good things that grow in Ontario, you think of the Ontario Food Terminal. The Ontario Food Terminal is operated by the Ontario Food Terminal Board under the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. We're proposing to amend the Ontario Food Terminal Act to enable the Terminals Board to establish a capital fund that could be used for upgrading infrastructure, including the farmers market. In addition, we are proposing to amend the Act to confirm the status of the Board as a Crown agency and add liability protection for the Board members and the food terminal staff. The food terminal is in need of infrastructure updates, including the need for a new farmers market. Clarifying that the Terminals Board may establish a dedicated capital fund will assist it with making these kinds of long-term capital plans and investments. The capital fund would be a dedicated fund for capital improvements, and it would help the Board with long-term capital decisions. Unlike in legislation that governs similar public bodies, the Ontario Food Terminal Act is currently silent on the Board's status as a Crown agent. Similarly, the Act does not currently contain a liability provision for the Board members, and liability protection is commonly given to public agencies and their staff and those within government with powers, duties or functions under the Act. We're proposing to amend the Ontario Food Terminal Act to specifically add liability protection to align with best practices for Crown agents. These changes would bring the Act in line with other comparable legislation that governs public bodies. The intent behind these proposed amendments is to ensure that the Ontario Food Terminal can continue to play its important role, plan for the future, plan for the necessary capital investments to the terminal, and promote the stability of the local food system, operating successfully into the future. Ontario is committed to strengthening the agriculture and food industry through strategic legislative changes that support growth and competitiveness across the sector, ensuring that long-term growth and success of the Ontario Food Terminal and its board includes establishing them as a Crown agency and investing in their future success with a capital fund to help them address current and future infrastructure needs. In an additional measurement, to ensure that legislation meets the needs of the agri-food sector, we're proposing to amend the Beef Cattle Marketing Act. The Beef Cattle Marketing Act guides the establishment and standardization of procedures affecting the sale of cattle in Ontario. The Act also establishes the industry's organizations, Beef Farmers of Ontario, and funds the group that by mandating the collection of licensing fees when cattle are sold. The Beef Farmers of Ontario represents the province's 19,000 beef farmers. These producers are committed to a sustainable and profitable beef sector, and they are incredibly dedicated to the work they do. Their dedication is evident by the economic status of the beef sector in Ontario. It supports around 56,000 good-paying jobs and nearly $3 billion in annual GDP. This is a significant contribution to our economy. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusinesses works closely with the Beef Farmers of Ontario, and they are a trusted partner. The Beef Farmers of Ontario have requested a change to how their organization's license fees are collected. These license fees are used to fund the organization's marketing, promotional, education, and educational activities that benefit the entire industry. Currently, these license fees are only collected when farmers sell live animals to buyers, such as other farmers or processors. However, it is a common practice for beef farmers to process some or all of their own cattle, or to have someone else do it for them, and then sell the beef directly to consumers. When this is done, the Beef Farmers of Ontario license fee isn't collected. This means that those farmers are not paying their fair share of license fees, despite benefiting from the promotional activities of Beef Farmers of Ontario. And the Beef Farmers of Ontario do an excellent job of promoting their own industry. As such, we are proposing to update the Beef Cattle Marketing Act to expand licensing and fee collection to producers and transactions that are not currently captured under the legislation. In short, if passed, this proposed update to the Act would expand license fee collection to include those sales I've described. And another proposed change to the Beef Cattle Marketing Act, we also propose to remove requirements for buyers to register within the ministry if they purchase cattle based on carcass weight. Currently, there is a requirement for beef processing plants to register with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. These proposed changes and subsequent amendments to regulation under the Act would ensure license fees are paid for all cattle, regardless of whether they are sold with room for exemptions. The fee changes would improve equity in the license fee collection process. And the latter proposed amendment to remove requirements for buyers to register with the ministry would reduce administrative burden for processors, as they would no longer be required to apply for a listing of their plant. Planned follow-up amendments to the Beef Cattle Marketing Act regulations could result in cost savings for businesses, particularly for processors. Again, these proposed changes support our overall goal to enhance fairness, clarity, and reduce administrative burden for farmers. Additional proposed amendments under Protecting Ontario's Food Independence Act would, if passed, expand the definition of regulated product to more broadly include milk products in the Milk Act. In Canada, all milk entering the production chain is priced accordingly to its end use, such as whether it is used for cheese or ice cream or fluid milk. Our government recognizes the importance of the dairy industry in the agri-food sector and in Ontario. Our dairy farmers and the industry value chain they belong to are big parts of the great story associated with Ontario's overall agri-food sector. Our government's calculations suggest that almost 115,000 direct jobs and close to $7 billion in annual GDP can be attributed to the dairy industry value chain. We are proud of our commitment to support the strength of our dairy sector and our determination to protect it. That is why we are proposing to update the definition of regulated product under the Milk Act to include all milk products, including ingredients. In the future, this will ensure all dairy processors are subject to the same end-use pricing obligations, whether they make their products from fresh milk or by combining ingredients. If passed, these proposed amendments would enable future amendments to regulations to give the Dairy Farmers of Ontario authority over the production and marketing of intermediated intermediary milk products, as well as the authority to enforce equivalent price obligation for all processors marketing a dairy product. Consistently applied end-use pricing obligations ensure that all dairy processors are billed equitable for the milk products based on the same pricing structure. The purpose of the proposed amendments to the Milk Act is to help ensure that all processing entities are billed equitably for their milk components based on the same pricing structure. The amendments aim to strengthen the supply management system by supporting a fair and these amendments are aimed to strengthen the supply management system by supporting a fair and equitable dairy industry. I am proud to speak to the measures that we are proposing to support the competitiveness of Ontario farmers and food producers, increasing our province's self-reliance and unlock the sector's great economic potential. It is important that we remember how much we rely on food. And basically, food is what we're made of. If we don't have food, shelter, and water, we don't have much. So it's important that we get everything right as much as we possibly can. It's important that we realize the potential of Ontario as a food-producing province, not only in the north, but in the south, and can keep continuing the great things that we are doing. I now turn to my colleague, MPP. I will conclude with my remarks. I've been part of the agriculture industry for over 40 years, and I certainly do appreciate having the ability to come here and speak to the House about the agriculture and food producing province that we belong to. Thank you.